Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Mossi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Lost Signals interview. And this week we have a very special guest. We have Chris Wax of Rotten Whiskey Productions, writer and director and star of Case 347. I'm your host, Steve Ramosi, joined today by fellow Lost Signal Scott Thurlow over here. And we just want to say, Chris, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to talk about, you a little bit before we talk about your movie, get kind of where you're coming from as a filmmaker, things like that. So I know that you mentioned, and I looked at your IMDb page, and you have some other TV and some other filmmaking stuff under your belt. And, you've been in the industry for a little bit. What first got you into kind of filmmaking, and why, why did you gravitate towards that?
I went to art school originally for drawing and painting, and I was an art and English major in high school. And by the time I got to art school, I realized really quickly that I was definitely not a good illustrator or a good painter. It happens really fast when you get to school and you just say, holy crap, these people are a lot better than I am. And I fell into film, honestly. I just loved the idea of still trying to tell the story and kind of being able to cheat a little bit in my mind, having the camera do the work. I didn't have to paint the picture; the camera was doing it for me, and I just fell in love with it. Honestly, I think it's a few good teachers and a few fellow students that really made me gravitate toward film in the program, and then I fell into an internship at Miramax Films when I graduated, and I was in the art department there, and I got to read every script that came in the door. And after I left Miramax, after my internship was over, I worked on a film called 54, which was about Studio 54.
Okay.
And being able to work on that film, I got to work really closely with the director on that film, and getting to see that script, having known the script from Miramax and then getting to see it actually shot, just kind of solidified. I'm like, this is it, man. This is what I want to do,
Nice. Yeah, man, that's really cool. So when you worked at Miramax, you said you were just reading scripts. You weren't specifically working on one project or anything like that, or? No,
I was actually in the art department. So mostly what I was doing, you have to think about everything was actually film back then, Mm-hmm. We would be cutting film. So a film would get shot and it would get duped. And then you'd actually be cutting 35 millimeter film for artwork. So say a designer, had a concept or something, they would either have a still photographer on set taking pictures to try to emulate that. So say it's like Good Will Hunting. Mm-hmm. There might be which was actually a film that was happening while I was there, which is why I'm using as the example. You have Matt Damon and Robin Williams sitting on the bench. Now that shot may have been taken through the camera, the actual 35 millimeter camera that was shooting the film at that point. Mm-hmm. So we might actually be taking that frame for the poster artwork for the film dupe, or the still photographer on set, which is a thing that they used to have back then, may have gotten that shot too, as kind of like, this is an opportunity for key art. And I was just working in a capacity of mostly in like an assistant capacity of, different people saying, hey, we need this, go run, go do this, go deliver this to De Niro's office down the street, go drop this off to Weinstein's office,
Yeah.
You were just running around, but I got to, as a perk, because the art department had to read everything that came in. So they had a vision of what they were working on. Everybody was privy to the scripts that were purchased, so I got to see everything that was greenlit before anybody else.
It's a hell of an education, huh?
Super good. I mean, I was reading scripts like Dogma, I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. I got to read Dogma and thought, I'm glad they bought this script, but there's no way they're making this movie. There was a shit monster, and there was, it was just stuff that was like, there's no way that this is getting made. And Good Will Hunting, Cider House Rules, and Swingers, and all these, magnificent indie script, films that became greats.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool, man. I'm jealous.
It was awesome, but now you don't have to have that anymore. You don't have to have that inside anymore. I mean, I don't know about the East Coast where you guys are, because I left 15 years ago, but here, right smack in the middle of Hollywood, you can go to the Writers Guild Association and pull any script off the shelf. They have them all on iPads now, and you can just sit down and read whatever script you want. They have a library full of endless library, That's
really cool. Yeah, I like to get my hands on scripts whenever I can and just read through them briefly just for fun, because I like movies. But I think I have one, like the original American Beauty script downstairs or something. But
wow.
So that's, not the ones that they had, but like whatever the original script was, which was different than the movie ended up being. But that was cool.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because you get to see, I actually was telling somebody about that recently. At Miramax, they were very, very well known for being kind of a writer-director studio. So the words that were on the page that was the film. But it is interesting, like you're saying. So you're reading this American Beauty script that wound up kind of turning out differently. Yeah. So it is really cool. It's cool to see which ones make it to screen, which ones don't, maybe why, it's definitely an education, being able to see that paper.
Yeah, it really is. So I wanted to, in kind of that vein, I wanted to ask you something. I know that, or I like to think that I can be helpful from time to time to people that are listening to the show, whatever. And when I get somebody on that's had, a career for a while, like yourself, I like to ask kind of, if you were talking to somebody just getting into film or TV, kind of what advice on what kind of projects they should try to gravitate towards, or if you had any favorite projects that you did that you think really pushed you forward in terms of your career?
Yeah, it's a tough question, because, I was asking the same question 15 years ago, and I asked a lot of people, and I'm a big fan of asking people, when you bump into somebody that's doing well. And, one of the weird things about being in Hollywood is you do bump into people and you do say, holy shit, I literally see Kevin Smith all the time. I never talk to him, but I see him all the time. Yeah. I see him on his morning walks. And I used to bump into Drew Carey all the time at this one diner where he films right down the street from CBS. Right. And I sat him down one day and said, yeah, man, would you mind just, giving me like a 15-minute spiel of what you recommend? And so I've asked everybody that type of stuff, and you get a million different answers. And my answer is twofold. There's no right way, right? There's no one way to do it. I will say how I did it, and I will say kind of the way that, not that I've done it, I'm not, who the hell am I, but I'll tell you how I've gone about it so far, and what I recommend, and that is doing the thing that you want to do. You can't wait for permission to do it. You have to make your own content. And one of the things teachers used to tell me is you have to back then, you have to put film through the camera. So the only way you're going to learn is to put film through the camera. So if you're an aspiring filmmaker today, you have the benefit of not having to put film through the camera. Make sure that red light is blinking, man. You have to be out doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. If you're supposed to be a writer, then make sure you're writing. And the great thing about content these days is you can pick up a camera. It might seem far-fetched, and I understand this feeling, because when I was younger, a couple of grand was, you might as well have said, I need a few million. Right. But, for a couple of grand, you can get, a really great Sony A7R2 or something, or you can, get one of the Canon packages or something, and you can rent lenses, which is the most important part. You could rent cine lenses for super cheap. I used to do it in New York. I would have a body on something and I would go rent a lens, for $25 a day. It was amazingly cheap. And before you know it, you're doing it, and you're working with people, and it doesn't matter if it's a short, if it's a sketch, if it's anything. I used to put on live performances doing sketch comedy in New York. We were writing and working with actors and seeing people put up your stuff. And it's all an education. So my advice is always just do. Just keep going, keep doing what it is that you want to do, and that will be what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that makes any sense.
Man, we can back that up sort of. Like, just doing the podcast even, it's kind of similar to that. And like you said, the barrier to entry is pretty much lower than it's ever been. So like, in terms of getting equipment and setup and stuff like that, it's easier than ever. So yeah, I'll just say we second that. Like, just go with it, get out there, do it, run with it, and you'll find yourself doing what you want.
Exactly. It's like you kind of have no excuse at this point. And it took me a long time to come to that. But you guys are right, man. You have a podcast because you just did it, and then who knows what you build from there. Joe Rogan has the most popular podcast in the world. Who the hell was Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan by all rights should not have the most popular podcast in the world. He has probably the best podcast in the world too. He was some host from MTV. Nobody knew who Joe was.
Yeah.
So I always say just do it.
It is. It's been we didn't know what the hell we were doing when we started, but it's been 5 years of figuring it out. So
honestly, I think one of the scariest things I've learned in life is I don't think most people know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
So as you're getting wheeled into the emergency room, you're like, I don't know if this guy actually knows what he's doing, and he's like going home to his wife. I don't know what I'm doing half the time.
Yeah. Exactly. But that being said, in terms of just getting it done, let's talk about your movie a little bit.
I want you to remember, you're in a safe place.
I will attempt to formulate a strong scientific theory behind this ongoing mass psychological phenomenon of alien-related self-deception.
Well, hello, Dr. Mia Jansen. Follow us, it's right up ahead.
You don't know where you are? Oh my God, but this is the famous E.T. highway. That is Area 51.
So what? A UFO then?
Yes, a UFO then.
I'm gonna count backwards from 5.
Alone in the dark, looking for aliens.
What's the worst that could happen?
What kind of light?
It's coming from the sky. It's really bright.
Rex, you want to set up the other camera?
Good old dad.
This is crazy.
I'm obsessed with his client's cases and his conspiracy theories, but I never saw him like this.
It's all movie makeup and props.
4.
Oh my God, I just saw something. I saw something right there. I'm not staying here alone.
That can't be the same girl. Wait,
let me tell you. No. This is not.
There's no way you saw him here, okay?
He was
He's
here
over
a
there.
second ago.
Too many unexplainable things have happened on this trip.
What's going on?
We don't know.
Yeah, wait for me. Should we be filming this?
We don't feel safe here anymore.
Actually, I'm on your side.
I didn't know we were on side.
You are now.
I do think we've captured evidence of something else.
Charlie! Oh my God, what's happening, Charlie? Oh my God, I'm so scared.
You hear that?
It's probably just a breaker. Let me get a flashlight.
If you want to give us like a brief, no spoiler kind of rundown of the idea of Case 347 so that we can go into it, and then I have some questions for you for sure.
Sure.
That I'm interested in.
For the UFO conspiracist, it was inspired by John Mack's investigations in the 70s of looking at people who subscribed to the belief that they had been abducted by aliens. And that idea, that notion that there's literally millions of people around the world that say they've been abducted by aliens kind of impregnated in my mind. Case 347 is very much an influenced by that, with a character that is going out to disprove, for the most part, in her perspective, that alien abductions are probably a form of mass delusion. And she's coming at it from a very psychological standpoint. And the movie is kind of her journey of looking into those cases.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see where she starts and where the movie ends up. but I don't want to say too much more. But I did want to talk a little bit. I wanted to go through a little bit of the cast, not the whole cast because there's a bunch of people in it, but kind of the notable ones. First of all, there's Mia Jansen, right, played by Maya Stoyan. Is that how you pronounce her last name?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah,
Nice.
Nobody gets that right. Yeah.
Charlie Sarah, played by yourself, and Rex McDunn, played by Jason Kropik. So those are the three.
You're killing pronunciations.
Yes, I was looking through these names. I was like, oh man, this could be trouble.
Yeah, Kropik and Stoyan are not usually nailed like that. Good job.
We'll see when I get to the. I got a couple of the more Hispanic names too. We'll see what I do.
Right.
But so those three are kind of your core group of documentarians, right?
Correct.
And focused on the psychological aspects that you were just mentioning. And then I have like 5 other characters that were kind of with for a large portion of the movie. And that's Gustav Bertram. Is it Bertram or Bertram?
Yeah, killed that
Bertram?
too, man.
All right.
Steve, you're like a historian here on.
I'm trying.
On last names.
He tries.
He's doing it.
Richard Gilliland, right?
Correct.
Who I recognized this guy, and like when I saw the movie, and I was like, oh, I have to look up for what he's from, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. But
yeah,
Siggy Bertram, his son, played by Sean Cullen Young.
Yep.
And then the other 3 are Sophia, Alejandro, and Socorro.
Yeah. Which actually, which when yelled in Spanish means help.
Oh, really?
But only when yelled. Yeah.
Interesting. So played by Gabriela Garcia, Michael Galante, and Julia Vera.
Yep.
So a lot of interesting characters you have here. Why don't we talk about them kind of first, and then we'll get into your kind of your thoughts, because you being the writer, director, and being in the movie, acting in the movie, I really have some questions for you about that. But let's talk about your cast first. So who did you cast first? Was it like the core group, Maya and Jason and yourself for this?
Yeah, exactly right. So Maya is, I've known Maya for about 10 years, and, her star has risen a lot over those years. She was a regular on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and on Castle simultaneously, actually. And she just did a big Netflix film too. So Maya's a dear friend, one of my closest friends, and I had the idea for the script. I knew that we were going to be in the concept of it, that more or less Jason Kropik and myself and Winston Abelos, one of my producers, and Jeff Parsley all kind of got together on this idea of like, hey, here's the concept. Here's the amount of money we want to try to shoot this concept on. Can we do it? Right. Jason was a big part of kind of being able to nod, saying we could pull that off. And then before I put pen to paper, okay, we could pull that off. Then I need a star. And knowing how run and gun this was going to be, even though it is a union to SAG project, we were still going to be not your traditional. There was no trailers on this film. There was no wardrobe trailers. There's no makeup trailers. There's none of that. I knew it was going to be kind of lax in those capacities. So right. I reached out to a friend. So I reached out to Maya and I said, hey, I have this idea. This is what it would look like. And this is what it would feel like. Would you be the lead? And she said, yeah. And I said, all right, well, it's time to sit down and start writing,
Very cool. Very cool. She's I like her as the lead in this. I think that, I did, I recognized her too when I saw this, but I couldn't remember what from, but I did watch Castle and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So
funny. Yeah.
I just didn't put it together. That's great. Maya's
funny because, it's funny when your friends start becoming recognizable, because I still, obviously I've never seen either one of those shows, unfortunately. And, I'm a huge fan of hers, as a person, but we were out shooting and we were in the desert and we, pulled into like a little diner. And we were waiting for nighttime, actually. And it was 120 degrees even at night. And we pulled into this place, and the waiter came over, and immediately, as soon as he saw her, just stopped in the middle of his sentence. And he goes, "Oh my God, I love you so much in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D." And I'm like, awesome. Damn, you're getting famous. I mean, you might be too famous for this role where you're not supposed to be a recognizable person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny.
But she did a great job in it. I thought that
she's awesome.
I was speaking of that kind of star power thing, I was looking a little bit into people's IMDb's and things like that, and I saw Julia Vera's had 100 credits, including Speed and The Net and Ambulance Lost.
Right.
And Richard Gilliland was in Airplane 2, along with like a ton of hit TV shows, guest spots and stuff like that. So what's it like having, especially on a run and gun shoot like that, what's it like having that kind of stable of actors who have been doing this for such a long time?
It's a little nerve-wracking, but we were using my place as pre-production. My place is always it always falls into that, so it's always a zoo of people over here. But I made it, with the exception of Krista Allen, who I only had a couple of Skype conversations with prior to meeting her. I didn't know her; she's a friend of Maya's. Right. And Krista, she's got an insane resume. And she's like this, supermodel, So beyond that, I had everybody over the house. So at one time or another, I was actually able to sit down, like have a cup of coffee and, make sure that everybody knew what they were signing on for, hey man, this is, this is what this is going to be like. I just gave everybody the script. So Richard, Johnny Dowers, Johnny's like the kook in the pickup truck.
Yep.
And Johnny's a writer-director. I met him a decade earlier on a film that he wrote and acted in. And John Grise, who is Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, was the director, and he's a friend. So I went to this guy's premiere 10 years ago. Now he's working on my, my little film, so I really just sat everybody aside and like started the conversations with like, I heard you're interested and I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is going to suck.
Yeah. It's going to be rough.
So I think that, if people are, if it's one thing, I guess, to show up to a set and you're expecting what you normally expect on a film set, and I would never let that happen, I guess. Cause I was just preparing people, I think, beforehand, and being really thankful because it's amazing that anybody would have an interest in working on a film this small, Yeah.
Yeah. It feels, it feels very intimate, in terms of the way that it's shot and kind of, and I guess kind of that found footage helps with that too. But, yeah, it was interesting seeing those characters work off of each other. Did you want to mention any of the cast that I haven't mentioned yet? I know I didn't name everybody, and I know you've named a couple other of the actors and the characters. But is there anybody that kind of stood out that you wanted to give special applause to or anything?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned quickly Gabriela Garcia. Gabby's canon actor. She's an MFA. Actor, just a brilliant actor, and she's a great human. And Michael Galante is a real rising star too. He's on several different shows right now. Another great human being from right down the road from you and I as well, right over the Tappan Zee.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, man, Johnny Dowers, powerhouse. Eddie Finley came in and did us a huge favor to just be like the smallest little cameo in the world, and a lot of people know Eddie from one of the Fast and Furious movies, and he literally came on. Somebody got sick, and he came on as a favor at the last minute to shoot in the desert in the middle of the night, and just literally have like one line, like so it was amazing. Sean is a powerhouse. Sean Cullen Young did a movie called something Baby. Damn it, I can't think of it. He plays a trans inmate in a true story. So he came off this like monster indie film that's like getting all sorts of wreaths to do us this favor. It's this little role of Siggy, So it's just it's really cool. It was really cool having everybody come out for it. Really,
Yeah, it is. That's great. That's great to hear. All right, so let's talk about this. In this film, you're the writer, director. You're basically the second billing, the second star. All really different challenges, I would guess. Do you have a favorite part of the experience, or like going through the filmmaking experience, or are all of them so different or good in their own way?
It's all good. I love writing. Writing is probably one of my favorite things to do because you do it you do it on your own. It's like it's just you and your process, whatever that means. Whether it's 12 cups of coffee or pacing around all night, and talking to yourself, working out scenes out loud. Shooting stuff off my dog, see what he thinks about it. So I really do enjoy writing, and it's the thing that if you've ever heard the 10,000 hour theory on becoming an expert in something. Writing's the only thing I have 10,000 hours in. So it's, the other stuff is cool. For acting, I felt like I didn't really get I'm like acting in case 347 so we could get through the scene. I'm there to help support the other actors. And I'm really only there out of consequence to have to hold the camera because I was literally directing the film from my shoulder, and I really tried working that out as if I could give that to an actual actor, and it would be too hard to pass that camera over to somebody and make sure they get the shot, and I just felt like it would be too complicated. So I didn't really get to enjoy acting, unfortunately, in that capacity, and directing while having to be in a scene is really difficult. It's people like Clint Eastwood do it, and they have somebody they really trust watching those takes, and I'm watching my takes from the screen in front of me on my shoulder, so I'm not really seeing my performances. I'm hearing them, I guess. So yeah, that was challenging. It was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. The days that you don't see or hear me in the film are the days that I got to just direct, like when Krista Allen and Michael Monks open up the film in the mental institution, and stuff like that. Those were great days for me because I wasn't in front of the camera or behind the camera. Really, I was kind of off to the side. I wasn't holding the camera.
Yeah,
so,
you got to.
It was different.
To give the reins over, or not give the reins over, but you have to take the reins a little bit more. And when you on those days that you weren't also holding the camera, I guess.
Wear one hat, which is nice. I want to, as time goes on, I want to wear one hat at a time.
Right. Makes sense. That's kind of what I was kind of going to ask a similar question about that, but you kind of answered it, about how difficult it must be to direct a scene that you're trying to act in. And especially if you don't have something like you just mentioned, like Clint Eastwood has somebody that's he's basically got somebody be his director while he's doing a scene, right? And then he goes back and looks at it.
Exactly right. So, it's really challenging, man. And I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend, being behind the camera, and having somebody else hold the camera and being able to really focus on performances. There was a lot of really challenging stuff. I mean, the found footage, micro genre gives one massive perk, which is you don't have a traditional camera department. You don't have a traditional sound department. You don't have a traditional lighting department. So you just made your film 75% cheaper than it would have been.
It keeps production costs down a bit, if nothing else.
Correct. But what happens on the opposite end is you start shouldering, and in this case, quite literally, the responsibility of getting that work done. I'm not qualified to do that, I could have an idea of what that might look like, but then you start blocking, it was really important to me that if we did this found footage film, it would be very found footage, and it wouldn't be cutting to different camera angles that were used in different takes. We were using very theatrical style takes where if all 7 people that talk in that scene get that one take right, then that's the one we're using, Yeah. And if you notice throughout the film, when the camera lands on someone and they have their reaction, at that moment, it's difficult choreographing all of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that turns into a massive challenge.
And I was gonna kind of ask you, since you mentioned it, what was your decision to go with found footage? Was it always that, or was it a production cost thing, or
mix of both?
Mix of both, maybe?
It was a mix of both. So I self-financed this film through my Rotten Whiskey Productions, and anytime you're going to be putting your own money down, it's scary. And I came up with kind of a figure that I could not have a panic attack over every day throughout the whole process. And that was a low number in the realm. I mean, it's not a low number. It wasn't low enough, but it's a low number in the grand scheme of things for financing films. And that kind of lent itself to be a found footage film. And when I started trying to think about where we might fall in the marketplace, how we're going to sell this film, where are we going to have a place in the market? I had an earlier call today with a colleague, and we're talking about kind of what's next. And when you make a film, I was talking to her about making a car. If we made a car today, if me, you, and Scott got together and we made a car today, and we're like, all right, we're going to use these old Volkswagen Bug chassis, and we're going to throw an electric motor in there. We're going to be pioneers. We're going to be doing something really different. When it doesn't matter how much or how little we spent on that car or who was involved in the process. When that car hits the street, it's competing with Ford, it's competing with Chevy, it's competing with Tesla, it's competing with Toyota. So it doesn't matter if you made a $5,000 film, a $50,000 film, a $500,000 film, you're still competing with $50 million films because that's where you're at on Netflix or on iTunes or wherever somebody might see you. So I had to try to think about where we could float, where we might be able to succeed in a market. And I've never seen a found footage film done quite the way we've done it. I've seen, things done in similar capacities. One found footage film I really love is Troll Hunters, the Norwegian film. Yeah. And I felt like, well, if I could do something in that vein, or if I could even come close to how well they did that. Obviously, that was probably, I'm guessing that was 10 times the budget I had. But that was the goal. Trying to do something well.
Sure. Yeah. Can I ask Chris? Yeah. Have you ever heard or seen a film called Lunopolis? Any familiarity with that at all?
No. Lunopolis?
Yeah, I kind of want to throw it in because watching K247 sort of reminded me of it. It's similar found footage. I don't want to give too much away either, but I think given for how your film was put together, I think you might want to check it out. I'm just going to throw it out there. I liked it quite a bit. Like I said, probably not many other people have heard about it.
I will. I certainly will. Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it might be interesting to watch for you. And like I said, it was not the same thing, but I got some similar vibes off of it from yours to that. So I just
do you know what year it was, Scott?
Yeah, it was 2010 or 2029, something like that. I believe 2010. So not that long ago.
I'll find it.
But yeah, I just want to mention there. Check it out. But I got some vibes off it, so I like both quite a bit, and I like the general feel of them and tone, and as a whole.
Nice. Well, hey man, anybody who watches my film and isn't verbally attacking me after, I feel like is a success. There
you go. got a winner there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that leads directly into my next question was going to be actually kind of asking you about your inspirations, film or otherwise, while you were writing and even when you were directing, and going through the process of making the film.
There was one thing that kind of stuck with me, which was Poltergeist, and the original Poltergeist. And if you remember in Poltergeist, the family is having this haunting situation happening. That the daughter disappears. All this shit's happening. I don't even know if the daughter had disappeared at this point, but whatever was happening in the house, they called in an expert, and this woman shows up, and amazing character of that film, memorable character of that film shows up, and she brings along a film crew.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And the film crew actually has one of the most memorable experiences for me. One of the guys goes into the bathroom in the middle of the night and starts picking at his face, and before you know it, he's ripped off all the skin on his face, leaving nothing left but the bone structure, right?
Remember that,
this horrific image. And I thought at one point, what if the film were more about the film crew than it was about the haunting, right? So we're following through the lens of the film crew. And that was a big inspiration of kind of the way I was going to structure this script.
Very cool.
And obviously, Troll Hunters, I think, is the best found footage film ever done.
That is a really good one. I saw it a few years ago. Yeah. We can definitely suggest watch that one after you see Case 347.
We did review Poltergeist like a while back. Like, just I can't remember exactly. Like, it was a retro review or something like that.
I think we did it for a Halloween.
Yeah.
We do like 7 horror movies in the week of Halloween every year leading up to it.
Very cool.
So
how did it do? How did it hold up?
I think we give it a pretty good score. I think we gave it like an 8 or something, 7.5
out of 10. Oh yeah.
I probably haven't seen it since the mid '80s, so it's, I'll just leave it in my mind the way it was. You know?
Yeah. It's it holds up pretty well. It holds up pretty well, especially for other in terms of other movies from the '80s. You know,
you can check it out. Oh yeah, but very cool. Cool that you got inspiration from it, or sort of like it was a kernel of an idea for when you're figuring out for this.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times I don't know if you guys are comic books guys at all, but when I was a kid, there was a Marvel series. I think they're actually adapting it, which is called What If, right? What if, you know,
classic.
What if Daredevil, you know, fell off the roof, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What if, whatever. And a lot of times when I go into a script or I go into an idea, a lot of times I'm kind of doing a what if from some other scenario. So that Poltergeist, what if it was the film crew that we're following, right? So I definitely what if a lot when it comes to inspiration.
That's cool.
Yeah, I believe they're doing. I think Disney Channel's doing a show. For
what if? Yeah. I hope they don't. I hope they do it well.
Yeah. Me too. We'll see how it goes.
It should be interesting. But yeah, they are doing it. But that's another cool little. I remember I had a bunch of what ifs issues like back in the day here.
Yeah, the Marvel what ifs, right?
Yeah, they were great.
It's cool. It's like it's like almost fan fiction in their own office.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, let's change gears here a little bit. So you discuss kind of early and often in the film the idea that these encounters are viewed as the shared psychoses or delusions, right? Mm-hmm. And as you're writing, kind of how intense was the research into that went into looking into these types of things for you, and were some of these encounters in the movie, you know, some of the interviews in the movie pulled from like real interviews, or are they all kind of out of your head?
There was a lot of, I dove in really deep. It was actually another project, a television project that I was working on, completely unrelated, that I was trying to develop for a producer that they, at the end of it, didn't like. But because of that project, they wanted something that was kind of 1950s based in the sci-fi conspiracy genre. And because of that, I started really studying Roswell and the events that surrounded Roswell. And, you know, so I started looking at the White Sands Proving Grounds, and I started looking, you know, at all the stuff that kind of goes along with that. That led into BEKs, you know, obviously into abductions, Betty and Barney Hill, the 1960s abduction, one of the most famous and earliest abduction cases, and probably the most renowned, you know, the one that got the most press. And, so I dug in pretty deep. And then I have a buddy that's actually a pretty big UFO, you know, guy. That's a constant. He's a constant kind of co-host on a podcast, on an alien podcast, and everything. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, man, this is what I'm trying to do. So, you know, once I'm done with the script, can you kind of take a look and make sure I'm not going to do a disservice to the UFO community."
Yeah.
And so I had him kind of signing off on stuff as I was going along, and you know, having him chip in ideas and stuff. So I tried to, again, because I really want this to play well within the market that it does hit. It was important to me to not screw up the UFO lore involved.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, I don't know a ton about it, but it seems like you did a good job on making sure that everything was researched, at least, you know, like. Yeah,
you know, I mean, we have the Medlin mailbox in Area 51 and White Sands. I mean, there's a lot of the stuff that you know what I also wanted? I like when a film can freak you out enough that you might want to Google something afterwards.
Yeah.
And Blair Witch, you know, obviously Blair Witch had a, you know, probably a $40 million P&A support system to it by the time it actually released. But if you wanted to Google Blair Witch, as long ago as that was, you would start finding Blair Witch stuff. You know, they set it up so you would find stuff about it.
Yeah.
So I don't have that support. I just used the real stuff in the world.
Cool.
So if you walk away from that film and you say, what the hell's a black-eyed kid? I never heard of that. You're going to fall down a rabbit hole. If you look at White Sands, New Mexico, you're going to fall down a rabbit hole. If you look at any of the things that happen in our film, it's going to send you deep into the dark net,
Absolutely. Yeah, I did do a little Googling after I was done and kind of looking up what BKs were and that type of thing. And I had heard of the term grays before, but I kind of looked into that a little bit more. So you got what you were looking for,
Perfect, man. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, I got one or two more for you here about the movie, but let's talk about the changing up. I thought that the film did a really good job of changing up locations and keeping things moving. Was there a feeling while you were writing that you wanted to keep things fluid, or was that just a natural part of how the story came out and wanting to show as much of these, kind of landmarks as you were mentioning as possible?
When you're doing a found footage film and you can't rely on a lot of other things that most movies do, which is cutting in and out of things and, maybe going from a tight to a wide back to a tight, the things that keep you engaged as a viewer, we don't have, because you're literally on a static camera. So I felt it was important to try to do what we can to keep the film moving and to keep people engaged. It's also, it's kind of a heady film. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of, it's more of a mental film than it is, there's not a million things jumping out at you. There's not big explosions happening, so we have to rely on more of the mental capacities of things and be able to try to keep things moving and get to the next location and get to the next scene, get to the next point before somebody goes, oh, I'm bored out of my mind, So I think it works. I've seen the film a million times, and I still, sitting in the theater a couple of weeks ago saying, I feel like this is working, Yeah. So, you have to try to think about how your audience is going to receive, and of course, not everybody's going to like it, but for the people that do, I hope they like it a lot.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's great to kind of talk about that type of stuff. I find it really interesting the way that, and especially because you wrote and directed it, you have this complete sense of motion probably throughout the entire thing. But, if it's a different writer and a different director, maybe they kind of look at things different ways. So you have maybe more of a unified vision of this script going from writing it all the way through to making the film, which is kind of cool. But yeah,
I've actually never had anyone direct my writing except me.
Oh, really?
So I can only imagine where that goes. So yeah, I definitely, I've heard every writer in the world say you have to just let go of your project once you're done with it. It's like, well, let's see what makes it, because it could really change. Yeah. I also might be, I wasn't with Case really per se, because it was somewhat fluid in the way that it was executed, but you could get a person like Bill Murray who goes off script constantly. Right. Infamous for going off script. And if you're a director, you could be like, cool, I loved it. And a writer could be like, I toiled for hours on that word that you didn't say. There was a reason I chose that one over the one that you chose.
Yep.
So that must be torture in a way.
I bet. Yeah. Hopefully you've sold the script as a writer. Hopefully you've sold the script for a good amount of money. You can just
right. You're like, that's enough. I'm cool with that. Right.
Put a bunch of dollar bills in your bathtub and roll around in it or whatever.
Exactly. Put the dollar bills in your ears while you're watching the film. That'll make it okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so really just one more, and then we'll start to wind it down a little bit. But one more about kind of the movie, and it's just kind of about, I wanted to talk about, and you have done this a little bit already, but what kind of mood you hope people come away from watching the movie with?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the button on the end of the film, I want people to be walking away kind of scratching their heads about what's possible, because I think that's the most disturbing thing for me. I don't get scared easily, and the what could be, I think, is a very scary idea in any capacity. We're in that capacity right now across the globe. Where's the future? What's happening? What's the unknown? And that idea, I think, if I can have somebody sit down for an hour and a half and entertain them and have them walk away feeling a little uneasy, then I got my reaction. You know, I want people to leave my film a little uneasy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll say this. You know this, Steve-O. One of my childhood fears was, in fact, aliens. Like, I wasn't, like, surprised. I wasn't like, oh, aliens are cool. I'm like, man, aliens are scary, dude, if they exist. But, like, it's sort of, like, tapped into that for me. But also, as you said, Chris, like, while being sort of intellectually stimulating at the same time. So I think there's a really nice effect there, at least personally for me.
I appreciate that. And I think that's, you know, there's going to be a pocket of people. My younger brother, I was 11 years older than my brother. He was constantly telling me that there was aliens outside his window. That is a horrific thing for even a kid to say to you, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Because where does that come from? Where did that idea even come from in his mind? He'd constantly be telling me he saw a face in the window. He was on the second floor. So there's no faces, man.
That's unnerving. Sure.
It is super unnerving. So, for the people who are afraid, and I'm with you, Scott, completely. I don't think somebody's coming all this way to say hi. I just I don't know. So it's scary.
How it was as a kid. Yep. Yeah, man.
Right. I mean, I would love for it to be E.T. if somebody shows up, but Independence Day makes more sense to me. Right?
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on it. Yeah, exactly.
X-Files and yeah.
Right.
All right. Cool, man. I appreciate you talking to us about that. I do always spring a little surprise on people at the end of these interviews. I like to do like a top 5 question. Now, I got 2 choices for you on this one. I came up with 2. Just pretty simple questions, but I think either one will be interesting. So it's either what are your top 5 favorite alien conspiracy movies, or what are your top 5 favorite alien conspiracies in general?
Oh man, I guess I'll go with. Can I mix and match?
Oh yeah, mix and match them up, man. Do whatever you want.
I don't even know the title of it. So there's a movie called The Fourth Kind with Kerry Russell that I thought was a great alien conspiracy movie. There was another one with Mila Jovovich. Do you know the one I'm talking about? It was actually like it intermixed between found footage, and it was like maybe in like Alaska or something. It was so disturbing. Whatever it is, everyone kept seeing owls. Everyone kept seeing owls in this film. So I actually, as a homage to that, I actually have Siggy drinking out of an owl cup in one scene, just as a little Easter egg. But yeah, whatever the title of that film was, I felt like it was like The Fourth Kind or something. It cuts in and out of what's supposed to be. The way it was shot was not fun as a viewer because it literally cuts in and out of the actual, quote unquote, actual footage. So you'll see literally Mila's character acting out a scene, and then it'll cut to a scene of the actual psychologist who was getting this information and putting people under hypnosis and everything. It was so eerie. Whether you can call it.
Real quick, about the owl thing before I move on. There was something else mentioned about owls.
I did. Gustav actually mentions it as well. Yeah.
I almost took that as like a Twin Peaks reference. I wasn't sure if that was, but that's.
Take every owl reference as a Twin Peaks reference.
Of course, I take every owl reference as a Twin Peaks.
Well, you know they're very disturbing. I think owls in general, right? I mean, they could twist their heads around in nonstop circles. That in itself is unnerving. Yeah. But yeah, I liked that idea. There's something about deer as well. I had an experience with a deer as a kid, and I just there's something about that I thought would be fun talking about. You know, deer, owls. You know, the way he delivers that line. These are all things that they use to make you think, or you know, maybe a way to make you perceive the reality that maybe you know that you had just gone through. I liked that idea. I like messing with the idea of not only paranormal but psychology and parapsychology and all that stuff as well. So that film, what's the Richard Gere film where I can't quite say it's an alien conspiracy film because it's very ambiguous as to what the what the thing winds up being. But Richard Gere drives down from New York as a reporter and winds up in West Virginia with Laura Linney, and there's this entity that he kind of finds himself in.
Is that Mothman Prophecies?
Mothman Prophecies. Mothman. Yeah. Are you familiar with the movie?
Crap. Yeah. I remember now that you mentioned it. Jesus.
I think I saw that like right when it came out, and
yeah,
I'm looking it up right now in 2002.
Mothman is still chilling. Chilling. And again, it's this very ambiguous. People are kind of being abducted. There is loss of time. There is all of this kind of screwed up stuff. There's a little bit of stuff that's projected where somebody else might be telling the future. So again, I can't exactly say that that's an alien conspiracy film per se, but it is a film that's definitely left a big mark on me. Close Encounters,
yeah,
huge. I mean, that film. Everything about that film, the way it starts, all of these old planes showing up, this guy being in the desert, this completely ambiguous thing, and everybody starts having these kind of connected experiences. Now, the film, it didn't really end in a horrifying way or even in a scary way. It's kind of funny how that film it's a little flat if you think about it. There's not really, because the payoff kind of winds up being like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But what an amazing film. And again, it's not an alien conspiracy film, but E.T. left a huge mark on me. I saw it as a toddler, and I remember being in the theater. I was in one of these old New York balcony theaters, and 2 reasons I won't forget it. One, as I've just never felt so mind blown in my life. And the other, because my feet were dangling off of the chair, I kicked over a soda that went flying off the balcony, where there was like a 5-second pause of silence before somebody screamed, and that splashed all over somebody. So whoever that was, if they're ever listening, it was a mistake.
Sorry about that.
They're still holding a grudge.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine the guy's listening. He's like, "That son of a bitch! I always wondered."
Yeah. All right, man. Awesome. Good list. Very solid. So anything else you want to mention before we go?
Plugs, etc.
I mean, the film's now available on iTunes, Vudu, Amazon Prime, Fandango, Google Play, Flix Fling, Vimeo on demand. So that's the plug for where to rent and buy right now. And that's it, man. I mean, we're excited. We're excited to see how the film rolls out. We just released. I'm really excited to see how fans of the genre, of those 2 genres, whether it be alien or found footage, or people who love aliens and found footage, feel about the film. Right. Because there's also people who hate aliens and hate found footage. So it's not for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I talked to a guy this week in an interview who's like, "Man, I hate found footage films, but you did it. You did it for me." And I was like, "Cool, man. I like that. That works." So yeah, I'm excited about this and excited to see what's next. We have a lot of projects in the library right now that we're looking to get greenlit, and we're pumped about the future.
Awesome, man.
Stuff, yeah. While you're quarantined, you can check out Chris's film on all those platforms. Yeah. So good, Steve.
Yeah, very, very good luck to you, man. And
thank you, guys.
Just want to say thank you so much for coming out.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. I've been Steve Ramosi, your host, joined by Scott Thurlow from Lost Signals and our very special guest, Chris Wax. The truth is out there, and so is this film. Go check it out, and we'll put up the links. Bye, everybody.
You, guys.
Yep.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?